Welcome to Restoria, your cozy corner for gentle bedtime stories. My name is James and I'll be your host tonight. Every night, we bring you peaceful tales designed to calm your mind and help you drift off into a deep, restful sleep. So snuggle in, close your eyes, and let the story begin. The story tonight is called The Clocktower That Dreamed. Chapter 1, When Time Whispers. In the center of a sleepy little town, nestled among ivy-draped cottages and cobbled streets, there stood an old clock tower named Ticker. Ticker wasn't just a timekeeper, he was a listener. By day, he marked the hours with soft, melodic chimes, never loud or sharp, but warm and wind-chimed, like silver bells stirred by moonlight. The townsfolk swore that when Ticker rang, even the most wound-up minds began to loosen and sigh. He had been there for generations, towering quietly above the bakery with its cinnamon sugar breeze, the bookshop with pages always fluttering open, and the square where children drew hopscotch dreams in pastel chalk. Everyone knew him. Everyone trusted his voice. But what they didn't know was this. Every night, just after midnight, Ticker dreamed. When the last lantern flickered out, when the cats curled tighter in their baskets and the last spoon clinked into a teacup, Ticker's gears would slow. A faint blue light would glow beneath his brass hands, and a hush would settle through the room of wheels and gears like a breath held in wonder. And then he would imagine. Ticker dreamed not of alarms or deadlines, but of soft things meadows that swayed in rhythm with minutes, where grass hummed lullabies, lakes that shimmered with gentle seconds, their ripples like stories unfolding, skies where stars ticked across the darkness like slow drifting feathers. One such night, a small girl named Lila stirred in her bed. She couldn't sleep. Her thoughts were racing. They zipped between her ears like dragonflies. What if tomorrow was too loud? What if she forgot her lines in the school play? What if she never learned how to whistle? She lay still, watching the shadows move on the ceiling, then turned to her stuffed bear, Button. "Why does everything feel so fast tonight?" she whispered. Button, as usual, had no answer. So Lila climbed out of bed. She wrapped her blanket around her like a cape and slipped her feet into her softest slippers. Quietly, she opened the front door. The night air was cool and smelled faintly of baked bread and lavender. The cobblestones glistened under the moonlight. She followed the sound of the tick. Ticker's light was glowing gently above the square. Not bright, but enough to guide someone looking for a slower pace. The tower's door, though old, opened with surprising ease. Inside, the air was warm and smelled of old wood, beeswax, and something sweeter like the inside of a lullaby. The winding stairs curved upward like the shell of a sleepy snail. Lila climbed them slowly, hand-brushing the worn banister. At the top, she entered the clock room. Soft light bathed the walls. Gears turned slowly, peacefully. The huge face of the clock looked out into the night, glowing faint blue. The second hand moved like a leaf on water. "Hello?" Lila whispered, and the room replied, "Hello, Lila." The voice was gentle, neither deep nor high, but balanced like time itself. It came from everywhere and nowhere. It sounded like the quiet before a story. "Are you dreaming?" she asked. "I am," Ticker replied. "And now you are too." She stepped closer. "What do you dream about?" Ticker ticked. "I dream of meadows that keep time by the wind," he said. "Of rivers that mark hours by ripples. Of clouds that float by the day instead of the minute." Lila smiled and sat down on the wooden floor. "Can I dream with you?" "You already are." Ticker told her of a sky made of velvet, stitched with stars that whispered secrets, of a forest where time curled up to nap beneath mossy branches, of a mountain that sighed once every hour and never in a hurry. Lila yawned. The clock hands glowed just a little brighter, and when the chime of one gently rang, soft as a feather falling into snow, Lila was asleep, curled against the wall, blanket wrapped tight. Ticker ticked on, and for the first time in all his years, he dreamed with someone beside him. Chapter 2. The Dreamkeeper's Melody. Morning in the town yawned wide and quiet. Sunlight filtered gently through lace curtains, warming the rooftops and painting golden paths across the cobbled streets. Birds cooed from the eaves, and the baker rolled open his shutters with the scent of rising bread drifting into the square. High above, Ticker stood still and dignified, his hands moving forward with quiet certainty. No one in the town knew that tucked behind his glowing clock face, a little girl was curled up on the floor of the tower, wrapped in her blanket, sleeping soundly beside the dreaming gears. Ticker didn't wake her. He moved slowly this morning. His chimes rang softer than usual, like a lullaby remembered from long ago. Time, today, was content to tiptoe. Around mid-morning, Lila stirred. Her eyelids fluttered as the golden light reached through the window and kissed her cheeks. She opened her eyes slowly and blinked at the great room around her. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then she remembered the climb, the voice, the dream. "Good morning, Ticker," she whispered. Ticker responded not with words, but with a low, musical tick-tock slower than usual, like a sigh stretched out in sunlight. She stood, stretched, and brushed the sleep from her eyes. "Did I dream with you?" "You did?" Ticker said at last. His voice came through the walls, the floorboards, the turning gears. "You helped me dream longer than I have in years." Lila grinned. "I liked it. It was quiet in the best way." She walked to the window and looked out at the town. Everything below moved slowly, people walking with cups of tea in hand, cats lounging in sunbeams, a painter dabbing at a canvas in the square. "Why is it so peaceful today?" "Because time listened," Ticker said. Lila tilted her head. "I don't understand. When we dream, the world remembers how to breathe. And when we rest, the world follows." She watched the town for a while, heart resting. After some time, she asked, "Can I come back tonight?" Ticker ticked once warmly. "Of course, bring your dreams." That evening, after supper and bath and brushing her teeth, Lila asked her parents, "Can I visit the Clocktower again?" They exchanged glances, smiling. "The Clocktower?" her mother said. "You mean in your dreams?" Lila nodded. "Exactly." They tucked her in, kissed her forehead, and turned out the light. And once again, beneath the glow of stars, Lila made her way across the cobbled streets to the waiting tower. The door was slightly ajar, as if it had missed her. Up the winding stairs she went, and at the top, the room pulsed with the gentle hum of turning time. "Hello again," she said. "Welcome, Dreamkeeper," Ticker replied. That night, the stories returned, of fields made of hourglass sand, where each grain held a memory, of a tree whose rings told not years but lullabies, of a moon that swayed like a pendulum, keeping time for all the sleepy creatures of the sky. And when Lila finally drifted off once more, the clock tower smiled, and its chimes sang softer than ever. From then on, time in the town seemed to slow each night, just a little. Enough for a few more yawns, a few deeper breaths, and a dream or two passed gently through the air. And always, always, Ticker dreamed too. Chapter 3. The Night of No Tick. It was the quietest night the town had ever known. Lanterns glowed warmly behind drawn curtains, Children were tucked under quilts, and the scent of chamomile tea lingered in kitchens. Everything felt as it always did, gentle, still, and just a little magical. But something was missing. Up in the sky, the stars blinked uncertainly. On the ground, a hush had settled over the cobblestones, too deep for comfort. Even the wind tiptoed around corners, as if afraid to disturb something fragile. And then someone noticed. "There's no chime," whispered a baker, peering out her window. "The hour never rang," said a boy, lying awake in bed, counting seconds that didn't come. Tigger was silent. High in the tower, the clock's great hands had stopped. They hovered between minutes, caught in stillness like a breath not yet released. Lila, who had grown used to the gentle lull of Tigger's tick-tock at bedtime, sat up in bed. Her room felt too quiet. Button the bear was tucked under her arm, but even he seemed unsure. Without waiting, Lila slipped from her covers, wrapped her blanket around her shoulders, and padded through the sleeping house. The town square was silent. The tower's face no longer glowed. Its hands didn't move. The usual warmth was gone. But the door was open. Lila climbed the spiral stairs, her steps slow, steady. The wood creaked beneath her feet, and the air felt cool, almost shivering. At the top, the clock room was dim. Gears hung still, and the dream light had vanished. "Tigger," she whispered. No reply. She stepped closer, placing a hand on the smooth brass railing that circled the inner workings. "Tigger?" Still silence. Then, just when her voice had almost cracked from worry, a sound, not a word, but a sigh. Faint, tired. "I'm here," Tigger finally said. But it was quiet, weary, as though it took great effort to speak at all. "What's wrong?" Lila asked, stepping near the center of the room. "I forgot how to dream." Lila blinked. "How could you forget?" "I've dreamed for so long. But tonight, the world rushed ahead. No one listened. No one slowed down. And for the first time, I couldn't find my place in it." Lila felt something twist in her chest. She looked out the window at the quiet town below. "I'll help you remember," she said. Ticker's gears gave a soft tremble. "How?" Lila sat down cross-legged on the wooden floor. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a single item, a tiny glass marble, cloudy with swirls of silver. "I brought this from my dream. Last night, we flew over a sky made of mirrors. This was one of the stars." She placed it gently on the floor. "Do you remember that?" she asked. Ticker's hands gave the faintest twitch. "Yes," he said, barely above a whisper. "I remember the mirrors. They sang." Lila smiled. "Then, let's go back. I'll dream with you." She began to hum. It wasn't a tune she knew, just something soft, something slow, like wind brushing leaves or a river sliding over smooth stones. The gears twitched again. The smallest one turned once, then paused. Lila closed her eyes. "Let's dream of the forest that sleeps under the mountain," she whispered. "The one where the fox wears a crown of moss and the owls blink in time with the stars." Another gear turned. Tigger breathed. "The forest," he echoed. "Yes. And the path of feathered stones. I remember it now." A faint glow pulsed beneath the floor. Lila continued, voice growing sleepier. "And the pond that forgets your worries if you dip your toes. And the sky that hushes even the loudest thoughts." Ticker's hands began to move. Tick, tock. The sound returned like a heartbeat. The light returned like dawn. And outside, without knowing why, the people of the town sighed in their sleep. A hush of peace swept over the rooftops. The stars twinkled steadier. Ticker dreamed again, and Lila curled once more beside the great clock's gears, held button to her chest and drifted into a dream of her own. The tower ticked on. Time, once again, remembered how to breathe. Chapter 4. The Feather Parade. The town awoke to something unusual. Feathers dozens, hundreds floated gently through the morning air. They drifted like snowflakes from the sky, not falling fast, but gliding, spiraling slowly toward the cobbled streets below. White, silver, even pale gold, they shimmered with something that wasn't quite sunlight. Children pressed their faces to frosted windows. Shopkeepers paused with flowery hands. The postman stood in the middle of the square, a feather on his cap, blinking up at the sky. No one knew where they came from, but everyone felt the same thing: peace. Soft and curious, like waking from a dream you didn't want to leave. High in the tower, Lila watched with wide eyes. The feathers slipped past the windows, catching the morning light. She sat cross-legged beneath the gently turning gears, button tucked in her lap. "Did we do this?" she asked. Ticker ticked once. "You did." Lila tilted her head. "How?" "When a dream is strong enough," said Ticker, "it doesn't stay asleep, it drifts." Lila stood and looked out over the town. "They look like music," she said, "like little songs floating down." Ticker was quiet for a while. Then, "Would you like to see where they came from?" Lila spun around. "I can?" A soft hum rolled through the tower. "Close your eyes," Ticker said, "and hold still. Time will take you." Lila sat down again and pressed her palms to the floor. She closed her eyes. The ticking grew slower. The room grew quieter. And then it wasn't a sudden thing, it was as though the space between ticks stretched like taffy, until they weren't ticks at all, but beats in a lullaby. Lila felt herself drifting. She opened her eyes. She was no longer in the tower. She stood on a bridge of stars. Below her, rivers shimmered silver, and above her, the sky pulsed like a sleepy heartbeat. Soft music filled the air, not from instruments, but from the movement of everything around her. The feathers came from here. They rose from the rivers like bubbles and floated into the sky. They shimmered, swirled, then drifted toward the distant shape of a clock tower far below. Lila watched in awe. Beside her, a small bird-shaped shadow stood on the railing. Its feathers were made of parchment, and its eyes glowed like candlelight. "Hello," it said. Lila blinked. "Are you one of Ticker's dreams?" The bird bowed. "We all are. Messengers, carriers of rest." She watched as a new feather unfurled from the river's surface. It rose, spiraling up past her, glinting with a memory of laughter and lullabies. "Why feathers?" Lila asked. "Because they're soft enough to land on someone's thoughts without waking them." Lila smiled. "I want to send one." The bird nodded and extended a wing. "Think of someone who needs rest." Lila closed her eyes. She thought of her neighbor, Mrs. Bloom, who stayed up late knitting by the window. Of the teacher who always looked tired after school. Of her little brother who tossed and turned in his crib. When she opened her eyes, a feather had appeared in her palm. It was the color of rain clouds and lavender. She let it go. It floated upward, then curled through the sky, joining the others on their silent parade. The bird bowed again. "Thank you, Dreamkeeper." And just like that, the stars dimmed. The bridge faded. The rivers of silver grew still. Lila blinked and found herself once more inside the tower. Ticker's hands were still moving. The gears turned. The light glowed warm. "Where did I go?" she asked. "Exactly where you were needed," Ticker said. Lila smiled and sat down again. heart full and eyes soft. Outside, the townsfolk were gathering the feathers gently, tucking them into coat pockets, pinning them above doorways, placing them under pillows. That night, sleep came quickly to everyone. And above them all, the tower chimed once at midnight, clear and warm. The dreams, it seemed, were just beginning. Chapter 5. The Girl and the Gears. It had been many nights since Lila first climbed the Clocktower. Now, it felt like part of her. The creak of the stair, the hush of the lantern room, the steady breath of the gears turning in their long, slow rhythm. Each evening, after the town grew quiet and the stars blinked awake, she would return, wrapped in her blanket, button tucked under her arm. Tika welcomed her every time. "Dreamkeeper," he called her now, with a hum that echoed through the tower's walls. Tonight, the sky was clouded. No stars, no moon, just a soft gray hush. But the clock face still glowed, steady and kind, casting gentle light across the wood-paneled floor. Lila curled up beside the golden gears, watching them move. "Ticker," she asked, "do you ever get tired of ticking?" He ticked once. "Not when it means something." She nodded slowly. "Sometimes I feel like I'm ticking too, always going and thinking, but I don't always know where I'm heading." The gears turned, slow and thoughtful. "Time doesn't always have to go somewhere," said Ticker. "Sometimes it just needs to be held." Lila let the silence stretch, resting her cheek against the floor. "Will you teach me?" she asked. "To tick? To listen? To hold time?" There was a pause. Then, Ticker's low chime rang once like a soft agreement. "Close your eyes." Lila obeyed. "Now," Ticker said, "breathe in like the beginning of a second, and out like the end of one." She breathed. "Let your thoughts settle. Let them land like feathers." They did, slowly. "Now listen. To the turn of the gear. To the hush between ticks. To the space where nothing rushes." Lila listened. In the distance, a nightbird called. The gears turned once more. And beneath it all, she heard something else. A low, warm melody. It wasn't sung aloud. It was the song of time itself, the lullaby of passing moments, not lost, not wasted, just moving gently by. "Do you hear it?" Ticker asked. "Yes," she whispered, and for the first time, she wasn't chasing time. She was floating in it. "I think," said Ticker, "you're learning how to be still without stopping." Lila smiled, eyes still closed. "I want to share this." Ticker ticked once, encouragingly. That night, Lila sat at the edge of the glowing window and wrote a letter in her smallest, neatest handwriting. It wasn't addressed to anyone in particular. "Dear you, if time feels too fast, find a moment. One single tick. Hold it, breathe with it. You don't have to chase time. It will wait for you if you let it. Yours in stillness." A dreamkeeper? She folded it gently, and Ticker opened a small brass drawer she'd never noticed before. Inside were letters just like hers, written in different hands, with different hopes. Ticker spoke softly. "Many have visited. You are not the first to dream here." Lila's eyes widened. "There were others?" "Yes," said Ticker. "Each left behind a piece of their dream, and every one still echoes in my tick." She tucked her letter inside the drawer. "Will someone find it?" Ticker answered. "Someone always does." Outside, the clouds began to part. A few stars peeked through, bashful but bright. Lila curled beside Button and the golden gears once more. As she drifted off, she dreamed not just of floating skies and velvet meadows, but of 1,000 letters written in quiet moments, waiting patiently in the heart of the tower. And the gears turned on, carrying every one of them forward, one soft tick at a time. Chapter 6. The Midnight Song. The final night of the week arrived like a soft breath. The town had grown used to the change. People now lingered a little longer on their porches. They listened for the chimes with a kind of reverence, like they might miss something delicate if they didn't stay still. Children fell asleep faster. Grown-ups smiled more easily. Even the wind moved slower. Lila climbed the tower steps one last time that week, her blanket around her shoulders, button tucked beneath her arm. The door creaked just as gently as always, and the clock room glowed warm and gold. Ticker greeted her with a quiet tick, like a friend waiting by the fireplace. "Welcome, Dreamkeeper," he said. "Hello, Ticker." Lila stepped in, then paused. Something felt different. Ticker sensed it too. "Tonight," he said, "is the last night of a circle, the end of the week, the moment where time rests before starting again." Lila moved to the window. The town below shimmered gently. A few lanterns still glowed, casting soft halos over gardens and paths. From this high up, it looked like the whole town was tucked in. "Do you dream differently on nights like this?" she asked. "Yes," Ticker said. "Tonight I dream with a song." "A song?" "A lullaby that only midnight knows." The gears shifted, slower than ever before. The second hand paused, then continued in a rhythm that sounded almost musical. Lila closed her eyes and listened. First, she heard the low hum of the turning gears. Then, the sigh of the wind curling through the tower's rafters. Then, the chimestone note at a time, as if they'd been waiting their whole lives to sing together. The song wasn't one she could hum. It wasn't made of melody, exactly. It was made of feeling, warmth, stillness, and something like wonder. Ticker's voice joined the hush, like a note drawn from deep within the walls. "This is the song time sings when it feels safe," he said. Lila wrapped her blanket tighter. "Can I keep it?" "You already have," Ticker said. They stayed in silence for a while, the room breathing with its slow, golden rhythm. Lila looked around at the gentle glow, the calm turning of the gears, the soft beat of the minute hand. "Will I always be able to come back?" "You don't need to," said Ticker. "Once you've heard the midnight song, it stays inside you. You carry it everywhere." She nodded. Her eyes were growing heavy. "But I like being here," she whispered. "Even if I carry the song, I want to come back and listen to it with you." Ticker ticked, warm and steady. "Then I will always be waiting." Lila settled beside the brass railing, just where she always did. Button was tucked beside her. She closed her eyes. Outside, the town listened. The bells rang once, twice, 3 times 12 in all, midnight. And the song unfurled. Feathers drifted from the tower's windows. Gentle dreams curled through keyholes and chimney tops. Laughter from old memories stirred in the leaves. Time sighed. And everyone, whether asleep or simply resting, felt a hush move through them like a warm breeze. When morning came, the Clocktower chimed just once. A bell, made of stardust and silver. The town woke slowly. Children rubbed their eyes with sleepy smiles. Letters were found under pillows, small, folded notes that said things like, "You are enough. Time loves to wait for you. Sleep is where the dreams begin." No one knew where they came from, but everyone believed. And high above it all, Ticker ticked on dreaming, singing, listening, a keeper of time, a bringer of rest. And in the quietest moments, if you listen just right, you could still hear the midnight song.